I checked my tablet one more time as the crane lowered us toward the Pacific's surface. The deep Pioneer felt solid around me. Titanium hull, backup life support, enough battery power for 12 hours underwater. Everything I needed to map some unexplored seafloor and maybe find a new species or two. Final systems check. Wayne's voice crackled through the comm from his position behind me. Nicole, biologicals? All green. I tapped the screen showing my sensor array. Water samplers, microscopic imaging, DNA sequencers. All the toys a marine biologist could want. Ready to see what's down there. Janet, geological. Seismic sensors operational, core samplers loaded, mineral analysis ready. Janet's voice carried that edge it always had when she wanted everyone to know she was being thorough. Though I still think we're wasting time in this sector. Christian, how's she handling? Our pilot's hands moved across the controls with practiced ease. Like a dream. Ballast systems responding perfectly, engines running smooth. We're good to dive. Bobby? All electrical systems nominal, pressure readings normal, backup power at full charge. Bobby's voice was higher than usual. First major deep-sea mission nerves. Hull integrity looks perfect. Wayne's approval came through clearly. Outstanding. Our objective today is mapping grid 77 Alpha using the new sonar array. We'll drop to 6,000 meters, run a standard survey pattern, and be back topside in 8 hours. I watched the surface vanish above us as Christian took us down. Sunlight faded from blue to deep blue to black within the first few hundred meters. This never got old. That shift from the world humans knew to the strange landscape below. 2,000 meters, Christian announced. I switched on the sonar array and watched the ocean floor begin to appear on my screen. Gentle slopes of sediment, random rock formations, the typical deep-sea landscape. Nothing thrilling yet, but that was fine. Sometimes the best discoveries came from ordinary surveys. Sonar's painting a clear picture, I reported. Typical abyssal plain topography, some scattered debris fields, probably whale falls from the surface. Any biological activity? Wayne asked. Standard deep-sea fauna signatures. I'm seeing what looks like tube worm colonies and some larger mobile contacts, probably deep-sea fish. I adjusted the sensitivity settings. Nothing unusual so far. We dropped past 3,000 meters, then 4. The sonar kept building its picture of the bottom, and I found myself slipping into that old rhythm of data analysis. Temperature readings, pressure measurements, biological signatures, all the numbers that told the story of life in Earth's most extreme environment. 5,000 meters, Christian called out. Bottom's coming up on the forward array. I leaned closer to my screen as the sonar painted more detail. The ocean floor here was pretty flat, broken by scattered underwater mountains and... Wait. I stared at the display, not believing what I was seeing. Christian, can you hold position for a second? Sure thing. What have you got? I ran the sonar sweep again, watching the data build line by line. There, at the edge of our scanning range, the seafloor just dropped away. Not slowly, like a continental slope, but straight down into nothing. Wayne, you need to see this. I transferred my display to the main screen where everyone could watch. Look at these depth readings. The sonar showed normal seafloor at around 5,800 meters, then an abrupt edge where the bottom fell away beyond our equipment's range. That's got to be a malfunction, Janet said immediately. The sonar's showing depths past 11,000 meters. That's impossible in this region. I checked my backup sonar array. Same readings. Then I pulled up Bobby's navigation sensors, which had their own depth-finding capability. Bobby, What are your independent depth readings showing at bearing 270? Bobby's voice carried confusion. I'm getting no bottom return at all on that bearing. Like there's just nothing there. Equipment malfunction, Janet repeated firmly. We're on the Pacific Abyssal Plain. Maximum depth in this area should be 6,000 meters, maybe 6,500 in a small depression. But I was already running diagnostics on all 3 systems. All equipment checks out fine. Wayne, I think we found something. Found what exactly? I stared at the crazy readings. A trench. A big one. Way bigger than anything that should exist here. Christian's voice carried interest rather than Janet's doubt. Want to take a look at the edge? We could drop down another 1,000 meters, get a better picture. Absolutely not, Janet cut in. We stick to the mission parameters. 6,000 meters maximum depth, standard survey pattern. Bobby, what's our pressure tolerance? Wayne asked. Rated for 12,000 meters, tested to 15. We've got plenty of safety margin if we want to go deeper. I watched Wayne think it over. He was careful by nature, but I could see his curiosity getting the better of him. You don't get into deep-sea exploration without wanting to see what's over the next ridge. 8,000 meters, he decided. We drop to 8,000, get a good look at this anomaly, then surface and report our findings. Wayne, this is exactly the kind of deviation that gets people killed, Janet protested. 8,000 meters is well within our operational envelope, Wayne replied. Christian, take us down, slow and steady. I felt the slight movement as Christian adjusted our ballast and angled us toward the strange edge. The sonar kept showing its picture as we went down. Normal seafloor, then that sudden drop into blackness. 7,000 meters, Christian announced. The edge was becoming more visible now. Not a gradual slope or even a steep cliff, but an almost perfect circular rim where the ocean floor just stopped. I'd never seen rock formations like this. Janet, what could create something like this? I asked. Nothing natural, she replied tersely. Which is why I think we're looking at sensor errors. 8,000 meters, we're at the rim. Christian brought us to a hover, and I flipped on our external lights. The beams stretched out into the water, lighting up the edge of what I was beginning to think of as a huge crater. But where a crater should have a bottom, this just kept going down. Jesus, Bobby whispered. The walls curved inward like a funnel, vanishing into total darkness below our lights. I cranked the sonar to full power, trying to find the bottom, but the readings just showed empty water stretching beyond our equipment's range. How deep does this thing go? Christian asked. I checked the displays again. Our sonar maxes out at 11,000 meters. Whatever's down there is deeper than that. The crew went quiet as we all stared into the abyss. In 15 years of deep-sea research, I'd never seen anything like this. The walls were way too smooth, with curves that looked almost machined. The whole thing was far too precise to be natural. Wayne, I said quietly, I think we need to go deeper. I kept my eyes glued to the displays as we dropped past 8,500 meters. The sonar was painting a picture that made no geological sense. Instead of the jagged, broken rock faces you'd expect from tectonic activity, the trench walls curved inward with an almost mathematical precision. Janet, are you seeing this? I transferred the geological imaging to her station. These formations, I see them. Her voice was tight, and I don't like them. The walls weren't just smooth, they had an organic quality, like the inside of some massive shell. Curved lines swept down into the darkness, too perfect to be natural erosion patterns. 9,000 meters, Christian announced. Wayne's voice crackled through the comm. How's our hull holding up, Bobby? Still good. Pressure's building, but we're well within tolerances. Bobby paused. Though I'm getting some weird readings on the external sensors. I was getting strange readings too. My biological detection array was going crazy, showing organism concentrations that shouldn't exist at these depths. The numbers were off the charts. Millions of individual life signs clustered along the trench walls. Wayne, you need to see this. I put my bio readings on the main display. I'm detecting massive biological activity, more concentrated than anything I've ever recorded. What kind of activity? Unknown. The signatures don't match any known deep-sea species. I ran the data through my classification algorithms, but they kept coming back with error messages. Whatever's down here, it's not in any database. 10,000 meters, Christian called out. We just made the record books, people. Under different circumstances, I would have been celebrating. We'd officially gone deeper than any human in history. But the readings on my screen were getting more disturbing by the minute. Bobby, what's our operational ceiling? Wayne asked. Rated for 12,000, tested to 15. We've got room to go deeper if you want. Wayne, I really think we should consider ascending, Janet cut in. We're exceeding safe operational parameters, and these geological formations are completely anomalous. I checked my temperature sensors and felt my stomach drop. That's not our only problem. Water temp just jumped 15 degrees. Geothermal activity? Wayne asked. Janet was already running her scans. No volcanic vents detected, no earthquake activity, no explanation for the temperature increase. 10,500 meters. The biological readings had gone completely haywire. Not just high concentrations, the organisms seemed to be moving in coordinated patterns. I'd never seen anything like it. Christian, hold position for a second. I needed to get a better look at what my sensors were detecting. I'm reading massive organism movement along the trench walls. What kind of movement? I stared at the display, hardly trusting my own eyes. Organized movement, like they're responding to something. Responding to what? Maybe to us. The temperature kept climbing. 18 degrees above normal now, then 20. Whatever was behind this, it was massive. Wayne, I recommend we continue to 12,000 meters, I said. We're seeing unprecedented biological activity. This could be the discovery of the century. Absolutely not, Janet shot back. We're already beyond safe parameters. We need to ascend and analyze what we've collected. We haven't collected anything yet. We're just taking readings, which show massive anomalies that we don't understand. Wayne stayed quiet for a long moment. I could practically hear him weighing the risks against what we might find. This was exactly the kind of decision that made careers and sometimes destroyed them. 11,000 meters, he decided. We go to 11,000, document everything we can, then we surface. Christian adjusted our descent. Copy that, 11,000 meters. I watched the depth gauge tick past 10,800 meters. The biological readings were so intense now that I had to adjust my sensor sensitivity to keep them from overloading. 11,000 meters. We are officially deeper than any human has ever gone. That's when I spotted them. Christian, hit the external lights. Full power. The floodlights blazed out into the water, and what they showed made me forget how to breathe. The trench walls weren't just smooth. They were covered in a network of glowing lines that pulsed with soft blue-green light, veins carrying bright blood, or neural pathways firing in some massive brain. Jesus Christ, Bobby whispered. The designs moved across the walls in synchronized ripples, splitting apart and coming back together in twisted shapes that made my eyes ache when I tried to focus on them. They were way too structured, way too deliberate to be anything from nature that I'd ever seen. Wayne, are you seeing this? I'm seeing it. I just don't know what I'm seeing. The glowing network spread out as far as our lights could show, vanishing into the black void above and below us. But as I watched, something shifted. The patterns were growing more intense. "They're reacting to us," I said quietly. "The lights are responding to our presence." "That's impossible," Janet said, but her voice lacked conviction. I watched the waves of light pulse faster, spreading outward from where we stood like ripples in a pond. Whatever these things were, they knew we were here. "Bobby, how's our hull?" "Minor pressure anomalies, but nothing critical. We're still within acceptable parameters." The lights kept growing more intense, and I understood we weren't just watching anymore. We were part of something. The trench itself was coming alive around us, and we were the cause. "Wayne," I said, my voice barely steady, "I think we need to go deeper." I stared at the sonar display, watching the structure take shape at 15,000 meters. The readings showed geometric perfection, straight lines and perfect angles that nature just didn't make. "Christian, hold us steady at 12.5, Wayne ordered. "Janet? Nicole, I want samples of whatever's creating these light shows." I was already lowering the robotic arm, watching through the camera feed as the mechanical hand reached toward the glowing networks on the trench wall. The organisms didn't run from our approach. If anything, the lights got brighter. "Sample container 1 is loaded," I reported, watching tiny glowing specks swirl into the collection chamber. "Bringing it in for analysis." Janet worked her own sampling equipment, collecting water and sediment. "These formations are completely weird. The mineral composition doesn't match anything from this region." I moved the sample to my analysis chamber and immediately started running tests. Under the microscope, what I saw made me stop breathing. These weren't simple bacteria or plankton. They were complex, multicellular structures with what appeared to be neural pathways connecting individual organisms into larger networks. "Wayne, you need to see this." I put the microscopic feed on the main display. "These things have nervous systems. They're connected to each other through electrical impulses." "Connected how?" I applied a mild electrical current to the sample and watched every organism in the chamber react at once, not just the ones I was stimulating, all of them, as if they were passing information faster than nerve signals could travel. They're operating as a collective intelligence, a hive mind. Through the external cameras, I watched the light patterns on the trench walls change and pulse in rhythm with my electrical tests. The timing was too perfect to ignore. "The whole wall is responding to what I'm doing in here," I said quietly. "They know we're studying them." "That's impossible," Janet cut in. "You're seeing patterns that aren't there." "Bobby, are you recording this?" "Every second. Hull's holding steady under pressure, but I'm getting weird vibrations through the outer plating, like something's tapping on us." Wayne studied the sonar display showing the massive structure below. "Christian, what's your take on that contact at 15,000? "It's big. Really big. And the geometry..." Christian paused. "It looks artificial." I enhanced the sonar image and felt my scientific worldview change. The structure went beyond our scanning range in every direction, but what we could see showed perfect mathematical precision. Smooth surfaces, sharp corners, detailed geometric patterns that screamed intelligent design. "That's not natural," I whispered. "Nothing down here is natural," Janet replied, but her voice had lost its skeptical edge. The creatures in my sample chamber were getting more restless, their brain patterns lighting up in ways I'd never seen before. I fed the electrical readings into my analysis program, and got back results that didn't make any sense at all. "These things are using quantum entanglement for communication," I announced. "That's how they're responding instantly across the entire network. They're not just connected, they're quantum linked." "That's impossible," Janet said again, but she was studying her own readings now. "Bobby, what's our hull status?" "Pressure's holding, but those vibrations are getting stronger. It's like the whole trench is humming." I looked at the sonar image of the structure below, then at the glowing network surrounding us, then at the quantum-linked organisms in my sample chamber. The pieces were starting to form a picture I didn't want to believe. "Wayne, I think we're looking at technology, not biology. Technology. These organisms, the structure below, the geometric precision of the trench itself. Someone built this." "Built what?" I stared at the crazy readings on my screen. All of it. The entire trench. "It's not a natural formation. It's a construction project." The glowing patterns on the walls flashed quicker now. Ripples of blue-green light streaming up and down the trench like messages in some huge communication system. The thing below seemed to be responding, its signal getting stronger on our sensors. "Christian, how deep can we actually go?" "Rated for 12,000, tested to 15. We're already pushing it, but we could probably handle another couple thousand meters if we're careful." Wayne stayed quiet for a long moment, thinking through the risks against what we might find. I could see him wrestling with the same thing I was figuring out. We weren't just exploring anymore. We were making contact. "The structure's at 15,000 meters, I said quietly. "We could reach it." "Absolutely not," Janet protested. "We're already beyond safe parameters, and these readings are completely outside normal experience." But I was watching the sonar display, seeing details that made my pulse race. The structure wasn't just big. It was incredibly complex, with internal chambers and passages that suggested active use rather than old ruins. "Wayne, whatever built this might still be down there." The shaking Bobby had mentioned was getting stronger now, echoing through the hull like a drumbeat. The quantum-linked organisms in my sample were pulsing in perfect time with the tremors, and the light networks on the trench walls were building toward some kind of climax. "They know we're here," I said, "and I think they're trying to communicate." I watched Wayne's face in the reflection of my monitor as he considered the choice. The structure at 15,000 meters was calling to every scientific instinct I had, but I could see the struggle in his eyes. "Bobby, give me honest numbers on hull integrity at 15,000. Bobby's fingers flew across his diagnostic panel. "We're at 72% now. At 15,000? He paused, running calculations. "Maybe 60%. Still within operational range, but we'd be cutting it close." "Janet, what's your read?" She was studying her geological displays with a look that had grown more troubled by the minute. "The mineral composition readings I'm getting from that structure don't match anything in our databases. Whatever it's made of, it's not from around here." That settled it for me. "Wayne, we have to go down there. This could be the most important discovery in human history. Or the last one we ever make," Janet muttered. Wayne stayed quiet for a few more seconds, then pressed his comm button. "Christian, bring us down to 14,000. Nice and easy." "Copy that. Adjusting ballast now." I felt the usual pull as we sank deeper into the black depths. The pressure readings climbed steadily while I kept my eyes locked on the sonar display. The structure was getting clearer with every meter we dropped, its strange geometry becoming sharper. At 13,500 meters, I started picking up details that made my breath catch. "Wayne, look at this. The surface isn't static. It's moving." I sharpened the sonar image and transferred it to the main display. The structure's surface showed flowing patterns like liquid metal reshaping itself in slow motion. "That's impossible," Janet said, but her voice lacked conviction now. 14,000 meters, Christian announced. "External lights coming online." The floodlights blazed out into the darkness, and what they showed made me forget how to breathe. The building stretched beyond our lights in every direction, a massive geometric form that seemed to blend organic curves with mathematical precision. Its surface rippled with the same glowing networks we'd seen on the trench walls, but these were way more complex. Branching patterns of light moved across the thing's face like neural pathways in some vast brain. "Jesus," Bobby whispered. "How big is this thing?" I was already working the cameras, trying to capture every detail. The structure's surface looked very old, but somehow alive, covered in symbols and patterns that hurt to look at directly. They moved and changed as I watched, rearranging themselves in sequences that felt almost like language. "Janet, what are your instruments telling you about the composition?" She was staring at her readings with an expression I'd never seen before. "This can't be right. The spectral analysis shows elements that don't exist on Earth. Atomic structures that shouldn't be stable. Shouldn't be stable, or we just don't understand how they work." "Nicole, these readings show atomic numbers beyond anything on the periodic table. Whatever this thing is made of, it's not from our solar system." A shiver ran through me that had nothing to do with how cold the water was. We weren't just staring at some advanced tech. We were staring at something from another world. "Bobby, are you recording all of this?" "Every second. But I'm getting some weird readings on the motion sensors. There's something moving out there beyond our lights." I checked my biological detection array and my stomach lurched. Several massive contacts appeared at our sensor range limits, moving in organized formations around the building. "How large?" "Big. Really big. Some of these contacts are showing as 50 meters or more." I pressed my face against the observation window, trying to see past the reach of our lights. At first, there was nothing but darkness. Then I caught a glimpse of something massive sliding past just beyond our glow. A shadow among shadows, but too deliberate to be debris. "Wayne, we're not alone down here." The glowing patterns on the building pulsed brighter, and I realized the timing matched the movement of whatever was circling us in the darkness. The building wasn't just responding to our presence. It was coordinating with the things moving around us. "Christian, hold position. Don't make any sudden movements." I watched the darkness beyond our lights, counting at least 6 separate figures moving in what looked like a patrol pattern. They were keeping their distance, but I could feel them watching us. "Nicole, what's your assessment?" Wayne's voice was carefully controlled. I studied the flowing patterns on the structure's surface, looking for anything that resembled communication protocols. The sequences were too complex and organized to be random, but they followed mathematical principles I could almost recognize. "I think they're trying to communicate. The light patterns, they're following logical sequences, mathematical progressions. Whatever's moving around us, the structure is acting as some kind of relay, coordinating their movements and translating their signals into visual patterns." Janet's voice was tight with fear. "We need to leave. Now. We're way beyond anything we can understand or control." But I was watching the patterns shift and change, seeing glimpses of intelligence that made my scientific mind race with possibilities. "Wayne, I want to try responding. Use our external lights to signal back." "Absolutely not," Janet protested. "We don't know what we're dealing with." "That's exactly why we need to try. This could be first contact with an intelligent species." Wayne stayed quiet for a long moment, weighing the risks against what we might find. I could see him wrestling with the same thing I was thinking. We weren't just exploring anymore. We were about to make contact with something beyond human understanding. Do it, he decided, but keep it simple, basic mathematical sequences. I programmed our external lights to flash in prime number sequences, 2, 3, 5, 7, 11. The response was immediate. The structure's patterns exploded into complexity, waves of light racing across its surface in what looked like excitement or recognition. The shadows beyond our lights stopped moving. Everything went perfectly still, as if something enormous had turned its complete attention toward our tiny vessel. The quiet felt heavy, expectant, like the moment before thunder. "They're listening," I whispered. I watched through the external cameras as the darkness around us started to move. Not the random drift of deep-sea debris, but deliberate motion. Shapes emerged from the void that made my brain fight to understand what I was looking at. "Wayne, we've got company." The first creature appeared at the edge of our lights like something from a fever dream. See-through flesh rippled with internal light, showing organs that pulsed in complex rhythms. Tentacle-like arms moved with deliberate intelligence, each one the size of a subway car. What looked like sensory clusters focused directly on our submersible with unmistakable intent. "Jesus Christ," Bobby whispered. "How many are there?" I counted at least 12 separate creatures circling us, each one different, but clearly part of the same strange ecosystem. Some stretched 50 meters or more, their bodies moving through the water with grace that shouldn't be possible for something so massive. Others hung motionless, watching us with organs I couldn't even begin to classify. "Christian, emergency ascent. Now." "Copy that." Christian's hands flew over the controls, but nothing happened. "Engines not responding. I'm getting power to the systems, but the propulsion won't engage." "What do you mean it won't engage?" "I mean I'm hitting the controls and nothing's happening, like something's blocking the signal." I watched the creatures move closer, their internal lights blinking in perfect rhythm. The electromagnetic readings on my instruments were going wild, showing field changes that shouldn't be possible down here. "They're jamming us," I said quietly, "using electromagnetic interference to disable our systems." "That's impossible," Janet protested, but her voice shook. "Marine life doesn't have that kind of capability." "This isn't marine life, not as we understand it." The largest creature rose from the depths below, its see-through body showing what looked like a computer network instead of a normal nervous system. Glowing pathways snaked through its form, processing information so fast it made my equipment seem ancient. Bobby's voice cracked over the comm. "I'm losing systems everywhere. Navigation, propulsion, even backup power is going haywire." "Life support?" "Still functional, but barely. Whatever they're doing, it's targeting our electrical system specifically." Something massive struck the hull with a bone-deep clang that shook through my entire body. Janet screamed as the impact sent us spinning slowly in the water. Through the porthole beside my station, I saw one of the creatures pressing against the glass. Up close, it was even more unreal. The thing's flesh was completely see-through, showing internal structures that moved and changed themselves as I watched. What I'd thought were organs were actually geometric patterns of light that flowed like liquid circuits. And its eyes, if they were eyes, studied me with intelligence that made my skin crawl. "It's looking at me," I whispered. "It knows I'm here." The creature's touch set off new alarms throughout the submersible. Bobby worked frantically at his diagnostics as one system after another went offline. The lights dimmed, then came back on emergency power. Hull integrity's holding, but I'm reading massive electromagnetic disturbances wherever it's making contact, Bobby reported. "It's like the thing's scanning us." Through the cameras, I watched more creatures climbing up from the depths of the building below. They came out of holes I hadn't seen before, streaming upward like guards answering a call. Each one looked different, some with extra arms and legs, others shaped more like moving patterns than actual animals. But they all had that same see-through look, that same network of bright lines flowing inside them. Wayne, there are dozens of them. They're coming up from inside the structure. The glowing networks throughout the trench walls pulsed brighter, waves of light racing up and down in patterns that matched the creature's movements. I realized I was watching a conversation, the structure and its inhabitants talking through bright signals that spanned the entire trench. "They're coordinated," I said, watching the light show with scientific fascination despite my terror. "The whole system is connected. The structure, the creatures, even the organisms on the walls. It's all one massive network." "Bobby, what's our status on life support?" "Stable for now, but I can't guarantee how long. These electromagnetic fields are playing hell with our systems. I've managed to isolate the air recycling, but everything else is touch and go." The creature at my porthole moved, and I got a better look at what was inside it. What I saw made me forget to breathe. Those flowing patterns of light weren't random. They were following logical sequences, mathematical progressions. The thing was thinking, and I could see its thoughts. "Wayne, they're intelligent, really intelligent. I can see neural activity that's more complex than anything we've ever discovered." "Can we communicate with them?" I watched the patterns flow through the creature's see-through body, trying to decode the sequences. "Maybe. But I don't think they need to communicate with us. I think they already know everything about us." More creatures came at us from different angles, surrounding us in a sphere of clear flesh and pulsing light. Their electromagnetic fields created interference patterns that made our instruments scream with conflicting readings. "Christian, any luck with the engines?" "Negative. Whatever they're doing, it's completely locked down our propulsion. I can't even get the ballast systems to respond." I pressed my face against the porthole, studying the creature that watched me with equal curiosity. Its internal light patterns moved, and I realized it was reacting to my presence. When I shifted position, the patterns changed. When I stayed still, they held steady. "It's reading me," I whispered. "Somehow it's monitoring my vital signs, my brain activity. It knows what I'm thinking." The creature's limbs drifted closer to our hull, and I felt a tremor that wasn't quite sound. It pulsed through the water and into our ship, carrying meaning I couldn't quite understand. Pictures flashed at the edge of my mind, enormous underwater cities, old technologies, warnings about something deeper and darker than anything we'd seen. "They're trying to tell us something," I said, "about the structure below, about what's down there." But the images came in pieces, like trying to remember a dream. All I could grab hold of was this feeling of urgency, of danger that went way beyond what we were dealing with right now. The creature's lights blinked faster now, their electromagnetic interference getting stronger. Bobby's instruments showed one failure after another as more systems went offline. We were completely at their mercy, trapped in the deepest part of the ocean, with beings that had technology we couldn't even begin to understand. "Wayne," I said quietly, watching the alien intelligence study me through the porthole, "I don't think they're going to let us leave." I felt the mathematical patterns change from urgent to something that squeezed my chest. The creatures weren't just talking anymore. They were begging. "Wayne, wait. Look at this." I transferred the light sequence to the main display. They're showing us depth measurements. 15,000 meters, 20,000, 30,000. And every time they go deeper, the patterns turn red. Red how? Danger signals. Universal warning colors across species. I watched the largest creature press closer to our hull, its translucent form pulsing with desperate energy. They're trying to tell us something's down there, something we absolutely cannot disturb. Christian's voice came through tight with focus. Engines responding, but barely. I can get us moving, but it's going to be slow with this much damage. The creature at my porthole moved, and suddenly I wasn't looking at it anymore. I was seeing through its eyes. Images flooded my mind without warning. Very old oceans full of strange life forms. Huge structures rising from sea floors that looked nothing like modern Earth. And something else. Something vast and dark that made the Guardian's lights flash with terror even in memory. Nicole, what's your status? Wayne's voice sounded far away. I'm seeing things. Memories, I think. These creatures have been here for millions of years. They've been guarding something. The images kept coming, faster now. Civilizations that built cities in ocean trenches. Technologies that bent physics in ways that hurt to contemplate. And always the presence of something sleeping in the deepest places that must never wake up. Guarding what? The creature's patterns changed to pure math again, but these weren't friendly prime numbers. These were equations I knew from theoretical physics, calculations about dimensional barriers, quantum containment, the kind of math that described keeping something locked away from reality itself. I don't know exactly, but it's big, really big. And these Guardians have been keeping it contained for longer than human civilization has existed. Bobby's voice cracked over the comm. Pressure's holding steady, but I'm picking up huge electromagnetic spikes from below. Something down there knows we're here. I checked my instruments and my blood went cold. The structure at 15,000 meters was blazing with activity, energy readings jumping off the charts beyond what my equipment could even track. Whatever was down there, our little visit had woken it up. Wayne, we need to leave. Now. But we also need to understand what we're dealing with. Make up your mind, Nicole. The creature pressed against the hull again, and this time the mental contact was stronger. I saw Earth from space, but not the Earth I knew. This was older, with different continents and oceans that glowed with living light networks spanning entire ocean basins. And in the deepest trenches, things moved that were too large and too alien for human minds to process safely. They're showing me the past, before humans, before most life as we know it. There were others here first, and when they left, they locked something away. These Guardians are the descendants of whatever they left behind to maintain the prison. Janet's voice cracked with fear. Prison for what? The images changed, showing me pieces of the thing that slept below. Not exactly a creature, but not a machine either. Something that existed in the gaps between dimensions. Something that could tear apart reality just by waking up. The Guardians' ancestors had died by the millions to contain it, and their descendants had been standing watch ever since. Something that shouldn't exist in our universe, I whispered. Christian's report interrupted my thoughts. I've got some engine control back, but these things are still all around us. They're not attacking, but they won't let us leave either. I watched the Guardian outside my window, trying to figure out what it wanted from us. Its patterns had changed again, showing me math sequences that described ways to rise up. But every simulation ended the same way, with huge energy spikes from below and complete failure. They're trying to tell us that leaving will trigger something. Our ascent will wake up whatever's down there. That's impossible, Janet protested. We're just a tiny submersible. How could we? Because we've already disturbed the containment field. Look at Bobby's readings. The electromagnetic disturbances started when we got close to that structure. We've been sending signals into a prison that's been sealed for millions of years. Wayne stayed quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was carefully controlled. What are our options? I watched the Guardian's patterns, trying to decode the complex math it was showing me. According to them, we have two choices. Stay here and become part of the containment system, or try to leave and risk releasing something that could end human civilization. Those aren't acceptable options. Wayne, I don't think we get to choose what's acceptable anymore. The creature's lights pulsed faster, and I realized it was showing me a third option. A way to strengthen the containment before we left, but it would require going deeper. Much deeper, to the source of the trouble we'd created. There might be a way, I said slowly, but you're really not going to like it. I pressed my face against the porthole, watching Christian's hands work the controls with desperate precision. The engines buzzed at maximum power as we began our ascent, but the Guardian creatures weren't moving aside. They held position around us, their translucent forms pulsing with increasingly frantic patterns. They don't want us to leave, I said, studying the mathematical sequences flowing through their bodies. The patterns are showing containment failure, rising pressure, something about dimensional barriers breaking down. Nicole, we can't stay here forever. Wayne's voice cut through the calm. Bobby, what's our power situation? Enough for maybe 6 hours at current consumption, but if we keep the engines at full burn, we're looking at 2 hours max. Christian adjusted our ascent angle, trying to navigate between the Guardian creatures. I can get us moving, but these things are making it difficult. Every time I change course, they block the path. At 12,000 meters, everything changed. A sound hit us that wasn't quite sound, a vibration so low it bypassed my ears and went straight into my bones. The water around us shuddered, and every instrument on my panel started screaming warnings. The Guardian creatures froze in place, their internal lights blinking like broken circuits. What the hell was that? Janet's voice was tight with panic. I checked my readings and felt my stomach drop. Seismic activity. Major movement from below. Something stirring down there. Bobby's fingers raced across his diagnostics. I'm getting pressure waves unlike anything in our databases. Whatever's causing this, it's enormous. Really enormous. The Guardian creatures suddenly broke formation, rushing upward past our sub in clear panic. Their glowing patterns had changed to quick, frantic flashes, distress signals that needed no translation. They're running, I whispered, watching dozens of the massive beings flee toward the surface. Whatever they were guarding against, we just woke it up. Christian pushed our engines harder, following the Guardian's escape route. Hull's holding, but I'm reading temperature spikes in the water around us. Something's heating up the entire trench. Through my instruments, I watched the thermal readings climb steadily. The water temperature had jumped 15 degrees in the past minute, then 20. The displacement currents showed something massive rising from depths our sonar couldn't even measure. Wayne, we need to move faster. A lot faster. Christian, emergency ascent. Everything we've got. Already on it, but whatever's down there is moving faster than we can climb. I turned on the lower cameras and instantly regretted it. A glow was climbing from the deepest part of the trench, but this wasn't the organized bioluminescence of the Guardians. This light was chaotic, angry, wrong in ways that made my eyes water just from watching it. Janet screamed. I whipped around to see what she was staring at on the sonar display. The contact climbing from below covered the entire screen, a mass so huge our instruments couldn't map its edges. The readout showed it was bigger than a city block, and it was picking up speed as it rose. "Bobby, hull status." "Pressure's going crazy. Whatever this thing is, it's creating underwater tsunamis just by moving. Hull integrity at 80% and dropping." The temperature gauges shot past safe limits. Warning alarms screamed non-stop as our systems fought to handle the rapidly changing conditions. At 10,000 meters, I caught a look through the external cameras that made my brain want to shut down. Coming up from the darkness below was something that had no business existing anywhere. A twisting mass of living tissue mixed with geometric structures that hurt to stare at. Beating organs the size of buildings covered its surface, linked by networks of veins that pulsed with sick light. The creature's movement through the water sent pressure waves that could flatten our hull like a tin can. "What is that thing?" Bobby's voice cracked with terror. I stared at the creature chasing us, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. Parts of it looked alive, huge tentacles and sensory clusters that followed our movement with hunting intelligence. But other sections were clearly artificial, geometric patterns and metal structures that had been grown rather than built. "It's what the Guardians were protecting us from," I said quietly. "Something that was never supposed to wake up." The creature's movement sent shockwaves through the water that rocked our submersible violently. Christian fought to keep control as we climbed past 9,000 meters, but our pursuer was gaining steadily. "Christian, can we go any faster?" "Engines are already past redline. If I push them any harder, we'll lose propulsion completely." Through the cameras, I watched tentacles the size of subway trains reaching upward from the creature's main body. Each one moved with clear intent, feeling the water currents, following our escape path. The thing was learning, changing its hunting tactics as we fled. "It's intelligent," I said, watching the creature's hunting patterns. "This isn't just some ancient predator. It's thinking, planning." The water around us kept getting hotter as the creature's enormous body pushed aside thousands of tons of seawater. Our hull stress warnings hit critical levels as pressure waves hammered us from underneath. "Hull integrity at 60%, Bobby reported. "We can't take much more of this." At 8,000 meters, one of the creature's arms brushed against our hull. The contact sent vibrations through the entire sub and left behind a glowing residue that began eating through our titanium plating like acid. "Emergency foam now," Wayne ordered. Bobby slapped the hull patches into place, but I watched fresh cracks snake across the observation windows. One more hit like that and we'd be done for. "Wayne, this thing is going to catch us," I said, watching our pursuer close the distance with terrifying speed. "We need to do something besides just run." But what could we do against something that size? Something that had been locked away in the deepest part of the ocean for reasons we were only starting to understand. The creature's glow got brighter, and I realized with growing horror that we had maybe minutes before it reached us. Our little submersible was no match for whatever nightmare we'd accidentally freed from its prison in the depths. The submersible bucked and rolled as another pressure wave hit us from below. I grabbed my console to keep from being thrown across the cabin, watching my instruments flicker and die one by one. "Hull integrity at 30%. Bobby's voice was barely steady. "We're losing structural cohesion fast." Through the rear cameras, I could see why. The thing chasing us wasn't just moving through the water, it was pushing it aside, creating a towering column of boiling liquid that turned the ocean into a weapon against us. Every movement of its huge body sent shockwaves rolling upward that slammed into our hull like sledgehammers. "Christian, tell me we're going faster than this," Wayne called out. "Engines are at emergency burn. Any more, and they'll explode." Christian's hands never stopped moving across his controls, coaxing every ounce of power from our failing systems. But that thing's still gaining. I enhanced the rear camera feed and immediately wished I hadn't. What I'd thought were tentacles were actually something worse. Appendages the size of subway trains that moved with deliberate intelligence, reaching upward through the darkness like fingers testing the water. Behind them, a central mass covered in pulsing organs tracked our movement with predatory focus. "Wayne, we need to shut down everything non-essential. Life support, and engines only. Do it." Bobby's fingers flew across his panel, shutting down system after system. The lights dimmed to emergency power as our scientific equipment went dark. My sample chambers, the sonar array, even the water recycling systems. Everything that made us a research vessel vanished, leaving us with just enough power to stay alive and keep climbing. The turbulence got worse. Janet gripped her station with white knuckles as we got thrown sideways by another pressure wave. "How much deeper was this thing?" she asked through gritted teeth. I checked the thermal readings. The water temperature around us had jumped 30 degrees above normal. Deep enough that it's bringing the abyss with it. At 6,000 meters, everything went wrong at once. One of the creature's arms swept upward through our wake, and for a split second I thought we'd escaped contact. Then the tip brushed against our hull with a sound like fingernails on metal. The impact sent us spinning, but that wasn't the worst part. Where the arm touched us, it left behind a bright residue that immediately began eating through our titanium plating. "Bobby, what is that stuff?" "Some kind of acid. No, wait." His reading spiked. "It's not dissolving the metal. It's converting it, changing the molecular structure." I watched in terror as the glowing substance spread across our hull like poison, turning solid titanium into something that cracked and crumbled away. Fresh fractures appeared on the observation windows, spider webbing outward from where it touched. "Emergency foam, now." Bobby slapped on every patch we had, sealing the growing holes with expanding polymer. But I could see more cracks forming faster than we could fix them. The creature's touch was literally breaking down our submersible at the atomic level. "Hull breach sealed, but barely," Bobby reported. "Another contact like that and we're done." Christian pushed the engines past every safety limit, but our pursuer kept gaining. Through the cameras, I watched its massive form create an underwater storm around us. Pressure waves, thermal currents, and that spreading glow that seemed to infect everything it touched. I ran the numbers on my tablet, calculating pursuit speed versus our climb rate. The math was simple and scary as hell. "Wayne, we've got maybe 10 minutes before that thing reaches us. Can the hull take 10 minutes of this?" I looked at the spreading cracks, the emergency patches already straining under pressure, the way our entire vessel shuddered with each impact from below. "No, maybe 5 minutes, and that's if it doesn't touch us again." The creature's glow got brighter, and I realized it was speeding up. Whatever very old intelligence drove that massive shape, it had figured out we were escaping and decided to end the chase quickly. "Christian, we need more speed." "There is no more speed. We're already past red line on everything." Through the rear cameras, I watched tentacles the size of buildings reaching upward through the darkness, testing the water currents, learning our movement patterns. The thing was adapting its pursuit in real time, and our little submersible was running out of tricks. The hull groaned around us, metal fatigue combining with pressure damage and whatever that corrosive residue was doing to our plating. Warning alarms screamed from every station as our vessel came apart piece by piece. I stared at the massive creature rising from the abyss behind us, its body growing larger and more detailed with each passing second. In 10 minutes, maybe less, those huge tentacles would wrap around our hull and crush us like an empty can. We weren't going to make it to the surface. I pressed my face against the porthole, watching the depth gauge tick upward with agonizing slowness. 4,500 meters. 4,000. The very old thing behind us had closed to within 500 meters, and I could see details I never wanted to see. "Bobby, dump everything." Wayne ordered. All the scientific equipment, everything that isn't keeping us alive. But the samples. Now! Bobby's hands flew over the emergency release controls. I felt the sub jerk upward as tons of equipment dropped away into the darkness. My sample chambers, the sonar array, months of preparation scattered into the deep. The creature's glow got brighter as our gear tumbled past it, but losing all that weight gave us precious speed. Through the rear cameras, I watched the thing's shape become clearer as it closed the gap. What I'd thought was living tissue was actually something worse. A twisted mix of biological and technological parts that had been grown rather than built. Metal structures stuck out from pulsing flesh, connected by networks of veins that carried liquid light instead of blood. "This thing isn't natural," I said, studying the impossible anatomy. "Someone made it, engineered it." "Made it for what?" Janet asked, her voice tight with terror. I watched tentacles the size of buildings reach upward with clear intelligence, testing our wake, learning how we moved. "I don't think I want to know." At 4,000 meters, Christian's voice cracked over the comm. "Engine temperature's hitting critical. We're going to lose propulsion if I don't back off the power." "Don't you dare," Wayne replied. "Keep climbing." The hull groaned around us as another pressure wave hit from below. My instruments flickered and died one by one as electromagnetic interference from the creature scrambled our electronics. The water around us had started glowing with an eerie phosphorescence that made my radiation detectors scream warnings. "Wayne, we're getting cooked down here," Bobby reported. "Whatever that thing is, it's putting out energy levels that are off the charts." Through the cameras, I watched the thing's center throb with growing light. Each beat sent waves of twisted energy rolling through the water, turning the ocean into a weapon aimed straight at us. Wherever that power hit our hull, fresh cracks split the metal. At 3,000 meters, everything changed. A known blue-green glow showed up at the edge of our lights, but this time it wasn't the wild energy of whatever was chasing us. The guardian creatures were coming back, flowing upward from the deep in perfect formation. "The guardians," I whispered, watching dozens of the translucent beings position themselves between us and the ancient horror. "They're protecting us." The smaller creatures moved with desperate purpose, their glowing patterns changing to quick, coordinated bursts. I'd seen those signals before during our first encounter, but now they meant something different. This wasn't communication. This was war. The Guardians attacked in waves, their bodies pulsing with focused light bursts that hit the entity's surface like weapons. Each impact created bright explosions that lit up the entire trench, showing us the true scale of the battle happening below. "They're buying us time," I said, watching the Guardians coordinate their assault with military precision. "They know they can't win, but they're giving us a chance to escape." The old creature turned away from us, toward the attacking Guardians, its huge arms sweeping through the water to crush the smaller beings. I watched in terror as Guardian after Guardian was caught and destroyed, their lights going out one by one. "Christian now, while it's distracted." Our engines roared at full throttle as we climbed past 2,500 meters. Below us, the battle grew more fierce by the second. The Guardians fought with everything they had, hurling themselves against an enemy that dwarfed them completely. "Hull stress at critical levels," Janet reported, her voice barely steady. "These pressure waves are tearing us apart." I checked the rear cameras and saw the entity systematically tearing apart its attackers. Each Guardian that fell took with it thousands of years of stored knowledge, entire lifetimes spent maintaining the prison we'd accidentally broken. "They're dying for us," I said quietly, watching another group of Guardians launch themselves at the creature's central mass. "They barely know what we are, and they're dying to protect us. At 2,000 meters, the last coordinated attack fell apart. I watched the remaining Guardians break formation as the entity's tentacles tore through their ranks, destroying bodies that had survived in the deep ocean for thousands of years. Their glowing signals turned erratic and frantic, the light language of a species facing extinction. The creature wheeled back toward us, chasing us again with fresh rage. But the Guardian's sacrifice had bought us precious distance and time. We were rising faster now, our damaged engines somehow finding extra power when we needed it most. 1,500 meters, Christian called out. Engine temperatures passed redline, but we're still climbing. Through the cameras, I watched the thing speed upward, its huge body creating underwater storms that turned the ocean into complete chaos. But something had changed. Its movements looked more strained, like the crushing depths below were where it belonged, and the shallower water was fighting against it. "It's slowing down," I said, studying the pursuit patterns. "The pressure change is affecting it." Wayne worked the radio frantically, coordinating with the surface support vessel. Emergency pickup. We're coming up fast with catastrophic hull damage." At 1,000 meters, I felt something I hadn't expected: hope. The creature was still climbing, but its pace had slowed considerably. Whatever old technology kept it alive seemed built for the deepest parts of the ocean. But even as we raced toward the surface, I couldn't forget what the Guardians had done. They'd given their lives to protect a species they'd just met, staying true to their duty even as their old enemy broke free from its prison. We'd survived, but the price would follow me for the rest of my life. I felt the submersible shake violently as we broke through 1,000 meters, the hull groaning like it was about to split apart. The old thing was still down there, still climbing, but something had changed. Its pursuit was getting sluggish, like the crushing depths were its natural environment, and the lighter water up here was working against it. "Bobby, talk to me." Wayne's voice cut through the chaos. "Hull integrity at 15%, maybe less." Bobby's hands never stopped moving across his emergency controls. "We've got catastrophic damage on 3 sections. I'm sealing what I can, but we're running out of foam." Christian pushed our climb even harder, the engine temperature gauges flashing red warnings that nobody was watching anymore. Through the rear cameras, I saw our pursuer's glow getting dimmer as we pulled away. For the first time since this nightmare started, we were actually getting ahead of it. At 800 meters, I checked the thermal readings. The water temperature around us had dropped back to normal levels. Whatever energy field that thing put out, it couldn't reach us anymore. "It's falling behind," I said, hardly believing the words. "The pressure change is affecting it." At 500 meters, I turned on the rear cameras and my breath caught in my throat. The thing had stopped climbing. It hung there in the water around 800 meters down, its huge body pulsing with angry energy. Those massive tentacles reached up, feeling through the water. But something was keeping it back. "Wayne, look at this." I transferred the camera feed to the main display. The creature twisted against some unseen barrier, its glowing patterns changing to furious, wild flashes. Every time it tried to climb higher, its movements became more strained, like the water itself was pushing back. "It can't follow us," Janet whispered, staring at the display. "Something's keeping it down there." The creature seemed to realize the same thing. Its core pulsed brighter, building energy for one final attempt. I watched in fascination and terror as it gathered power from the depths, drawing on whatever old technology kept it alive. "Christian, emergency ascent. Now." The creature let go of everything at once. A pulse of twisted energy burst outward from its center, sending shock waves rolling through the water in every direction. The pressure wave slammed into us with crushing force, hurling the Deep Pioneer toward the surface like a cork shot from a bottle. I crashed against my console as we shot upward, our damaged hull shrieking under the sudden speed. Warning alarms screamed from every station as systems died one after another. But we were rising faster than our engines could ever drive us, carried by the creature's final blast toward safety. Surface contact, surface contact. Wayne was already on the radio, coordinating with the support vessel. Emergency pickup, we're coming up fast with catastrophic hull damage. At 100 meters, Christian cut the overheated engines and we coasted on momentum toward the surface. Bobby worked frantically to patch the last pressure leaks with what was left of our emergency foam. Through the cameras, I watched our pursuer drop back into the darkness, its glow dimming as it returned to whatever depths could hold it. But a horrible truth was dawning on me as we climbed those final meters. We'd broken something down there, some old prison that had held for millions of years. The Guardians were gone, destroyed trying to protect us, and their prisoner was no longer trapped in the deepest trench. We hit the surface hard, the hull finally cracking as seawater poured into our damaged compartments. Emergency lights blinked and went out as our life support systems flooded. The support vessel's crew was already in the water, pulling us from the wreckage before the Deep Pioneer disappeared beneath the waves. I found myself on the rescue ship's deck, wrapped in thermal blankets and breathing surface air that tasted incredibly sweet after hours in recycled atmosphere. Wayne was coordinating salvage efforts, while Janet and Christian received medical attention. Bobby sat nearby, staring at his waterlogged tablet like it might still tell him something useful. But I couldn't stop thinking about what we'd done. We'd set free something that was meant to stay buried forever. Those protectors that had kept it contained for thousands of years were gone, their old duty ended by our curiosity. As the rescue ship raced away from the site, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. New lights were starting to flash in the deep ocean around us. Faint bioluminescent signals appearing at coordinates that shouldn't have any life at all. Our little expedition had just set something off across the entire planet. I tugged the thermal blanket closer and watched the lights spread across the black water, knowing that whatever we'd woken up down there was only the start.